Welcome aboard the System76 transmission log. Our broadcast is about to begin. This is the latest on System76 computers, manufacturing, and Pop OS. Now for your in-orbit crew.
Emma, we're recording a podcast. How you doing?
Are you ready for all the cosmic puns you can fit into one podcast?
Oh, yeah. We're going to have a stellar time.
This episode's going to be out of this world. My name is Emma.
I'm Alex.
Let's start with some hardware news. We're a little light on hardware news this month, but we have two pretty big updates.
The first one is pretty powerful. It's a Starling ARM-based Ampere server using Ampere's new Ultra and Ultra Max processors. So you could configure that baby up to 128 cores and 4 GPUs. We added this to the line because it offers a more affordable option, but it also offers performance along with the affordability. So it allows you to scale up your projects, your business there at a reasonable budget.
I don't even know what I'd do with 4 GPUs, but I bet whoever buys this type of server knows exactly what they want. I asked sales what type of customers use this server and what they do, and I felt like it was top secret, so
you didn't hear it from us.
yeah.
Shh. And in other hardware news, the Thelio Mira has a price drop. So it went down from about $15.99 to now $12.99. That is the starting base price for the desktop. And we've also expanded the chassis, made some chassis adjustments a bit to now fit in the option for an NVIDIA RTX 4090. So
Again with the GPUs. I love it.
yeah, it's going to kick Asteroid out there. And as you can tell, we are not spacing out the GPU updates.
In software news, I'm so excited for Cosmic. I love it with all my heart and soul.
Yeah, and we just unveiled the new brand for Cosmic. It's got new brand colors, new logo, new tagline, and just a nice, modern atmosphere.
Yeah, we're also sending out Cosmic t-shirts with the new logo and stickers with every laptop and desktop purchase so people can start repping the brand right away.
Should we share more about the branding, some of the story behind it?
Rocket Man.
I think that means yes. So the Cosmic logo includes an open-ended O with a little blip underneath it. So it's meant to look like a display because Cosmic, it is a desktop environment, but we want people to build user experiences with it on any device with a display, like a smartwatch, exercise bike, who knows? Possibilities are endless. And it's also open-ended to represent open source, inviting the community in, also vast possibility through customization, and then the System76 blip underneath it, which is the underline. It has an orange to red gradient in it, and that's to represent customized LEDs, but also all of the customization possibility. And Cosmic's tagline is visions enacted, users empowered. With this platform, we're trying to provide a service for businesses and organizations to really be able to curate the experience they want their users to have, while also, on the other hand, providing the customization and all these different options for users to be able to create the experience that they feel works best for them.
That was a lot of hand movements and gestures for not being on video.
Well, that's just how you know. That's how I naturally talk.
It is a great story, though. I love the story behind the logo, and it makes me feel very confident that we're headed in the right direction with the brand. In community news, our community is growing at planetary proportions. We're going to be hosting 2 meetups a month now, one with the main focus on Cosmic and getting people to try, install, and file feature requests or issues.
So for that, we'll be handing out Cosmic gear, helping to switch people over to Cosmic, and also showing off the new features.
And the other meetup is for System76 fans and customers to get together every month and make new connections. We host all our meetups on meetup.com, and we post on social networks a few days before each event. And also on the event side, Software Freedom Day is right around the corner. The Digital Freedom Foundation is encouraging groups to throw their own Software Freedom Day event. Software Freedom Day takes place September 21st, and you can register your event on digitalfreedoms.org/SFD.
And I'm sure we'll be registering an event there soon.
Better believe it.
And we'll also have special Digital Freedom Foundation stickers sent to our international sticker reps, and those are available on our swag page, which is system76.com/merch.
And you'll see that we have a new Canada rep on there named Byron. So if you are in Canada, go ahead and send your request.
Emma, we have guests, and I'm so excited for our guests this month. We're really knocking it out of the galaxy with this interview.
Yes, we have System76 CEO and founder Carl Rochelle here to talk about the upcoming alpha release of Cosmic Desktop. And then we have Jeremy Soller and Maria Komarova here to talk about the engineering and the design behind Cosmic.
Thanks for having us. I wanted to do this with the three of us because we're kind of the originators of Cosmic, and so I'm excited to chat.
Cool. So for people who've never heard of Cosmic, what is it and why is it called that?
So Cosmic is a desktop environment for Linux and BSD as well, right, Jeremy?
Yes.
Yeah. So Linux and BSDs, and it is, so desktop environment meaning that essentially when you boot your operating system, it's all of the GUI interfaces that you see. So like panels or workspaces or application libraries or a dock, all of those things that you see is what is part of the desktop environment. The way windows launch, where they're placed, how they tile, the toolkit by which it's built. So that's like how applications are built on it, and all the design and care that goes into making that a coherent, holistic experience.
And let's go to the beginning. What drove you guys to make Cosmic?
I think there's a lot of different reasons.
Yeah, definitely.
I could speak to Carl's reason of it just being really cool.
Fair enough. I actually looked back in Google Docs at our oldest documents for Cosmic. The oldest one I found was in August of 21. Mm-hmm. So nearly 3 years ago then. And it was a pros and cons list of different approaches to what we were going to do next with Pop! OS. It was 4 things. One was GNOME shell extensions, which is what we were doing at the moment. We were adapting GNOME with pop tiling. It was called Pop Shell, which was a tiling. We had our own kind of workspaces fork that brought back some of the old behavior and some other things. So there was that one. There was forking GNOME shell entirely. And then there was a Mutter plugin, doing a Mutter plugin as one option. And then the final option was custom DE with window manager and from the ground up. And it was like least expensive, a little more expensive, most expensive, and we decided to go with the most expensive option, but it also meant the most flexibility for us. So it was we went through this really deliberate process of pros and cons of all the different types of approaches, and ultimately landed on building Cosmic. I think largely because we felt like there would be constant friction if we tried to do something like forking a project. We would always be working towards adapting that project to what we were wanting to build instead of just building what we wanted to build and always adding value. I think that's probably the core of it. What do you guys think, though?
Yeah, I also feel like this test drove Cosmic a little bit because some of the concepts, at least design-wise and usability-wise, have originated back then. So it's even 2020 when we started thinking of how we can improve the user experience. Our constant strive to make more advanced features more user-friendly and to go for something that's simple and straightforward and to actually deliver a flexible enough experience that people with different kinds of workflows can take advantage of.
That's a great point. It really started much earlier when we wanted to respond to our customers' needs and our users' needs in a more robust way. And that led us to do more design in the operating system. And I think we're kind of the type that when there's a problem, we really want to solve it. And so we wanted to try to solve them for our users. And then I think at the time, Jeremy and I and a lot of our engineering team, we're kind of fans of the suckless style of things, smaller independent projects that you can put together into a larger whole. And so another one of the reasons we wanted to build Cosmic was that in looking at the landscape of open source projects, like the really successful open source projects are things like the Linux kernel, MySQL, Apache, Firefox is one as well. I think Blender's really successful in this particular field, but most of those, maybe Firefox being the exception, but all of those have one characteristic in common, and it's that people can use them to build things with. And that wasn't a concept or an idea that existed within Linux desktop environments. And so we kind of took some of the concepts and the ideas behind, the suckless style of independent components and some modern UX and design and what we had already experimented with tiling and other things for our use, and we combined them all into a platform that whose real intent, while it's a flagship for Cosmic, its real intent is to enable people to create OS experiences. And I think that's a completely different approach from the get-go of what we were trying to build with Cosmic and why we were trying to build it. And it's largely to empower people because we think it'll be really interesting to see what kind of products people make with Cosmic. It's a platform that's extremely powerful and flexible in a way that enables you to basically create whatever user experience you want to. And we want to hand that to distros and companies and anyone that wants to build a user interface or something unique and see what creativity and ingenuity leads to.
And how did the design concept start?
We started by doing quite a lot of research, and what at least I saw during user interviews and reading different kinds of feedback and talking to people is that there are different kinds of workflows, and there are also different user needs, because all of us are familiar with with a certain way of using a desktop environment, like a desktop, which means we have muscle memory. Some of us are using mouse, some of us are using shortcuts, but all this muscle memory is something that's not sometimes easy for us to change, which means that on the one hand, we knew that we need to fulfill that sort of need for the users to be familiar with the desktop environment. And so that we are not introducing a lot of things that are completely new and cryptic and unknown. And we've noticed certain things that we had in Pop! OS back then that felt like maybe were not quite where we wanted them to be. So I feel like we started with just taking that user feedback and trying to figure out how we can make things easier on people, and also how we can accommodate variety of users. In our case, we have all kinds of people using desktop, which means it was important to accommodate as much as we can, and hence the flexibility and customization. And so it started early on, and then we started testing different kinds of layout patterns and different kinds of ideas, like breaking down the applets into separate pieces. And so like breaking one puzzle into separate pieces, so to speak. But I feel like those separate pieces in a way allow us to then be more modular and more flexible.
There's a lot of, I think, depth in the overall design as well. We started out by we got a bunch of futuristic interfaces that we liked and thought were interesting and had some vibrance and color. And it was things like different generations of LCARs from Star Trek. And we put those together. One of the concepts was that we would have, like, the window itself for an application was essentially like a piece of smoked glass, and elements that we put into it were etched into it. That ended up being the way that the header goes in. It doesn't quite have the etched feeling that we originally thought about, but that's where it originated. And then other components were on top of that, the navigation menu and the context menu. And so those started very early. We made early prototypes in Figma to see how well they worked. And it turned out they worked quite well. They were both responsive, and they gave a lot of flexibility to application design, and the context menu meant that as you got into different settings, you didn't have to go deeper and deeper into layers to get to what you want to, because the context menu separates the contextual information about what you're doing out in a simpler way. So I think that was some of our areas. Maria, you also took some inspiration from, I think, carbon design from IBM and material. Is that right?
Well, yes, I guess it is in a way, because we knew that we needed to create the design system, not merely just do separate designs. Because if you want the desktop environment to be functional, then that's part of the deal. And so for the design system, we looked at different kinds of examples. Definitely material design, definitely macOS human interface guidelines, a carbon design system. It's pretty much any design system I can put my eyes on, I looked at, because in a way, how we approached the actual design processes, let's say worked on the settings application first. That's what allowed us to refine different patterns like in different components, starting with simple components like a toggle and ending up with something more complex like list views and grid views and different sliders and all sorts of like other things. And we're still in the process of implementing some of them and even designing some of them. But I feel like we've got a solid foundation. But reviewing the design systems was definitely part of that process.
Theming was a big part of what we were trying to do too. And I think that's one of the most impressive parts of Cosmic, and that's the theme system and how well it works. How did you pull together the theme system?
Yeah, theming was an interesting one. I feel like it's been work on it in waves, but basically we knew that we needed to go for automatic color calculation pretty early on, or at least we realized that pretty early on. So after that, it was down to figuring out the principles, like even starting with things like which surfaces should be the same color. So which ones actually need to change depending, for example, on the main surface color, or that is every single color could be customizable. So it's just been like a wild west, a little bit of trying to put this puzzle together, because of course we did want it to be very flexible. But there are challenges that come with that level of flexibility and that level of customization, because obviously we needed to keep the color contrast in mind for text and for icons and make sure that the interface was recognizable and readable. And so we ended up with that idea of automatic color calculation for certain colors in the system, and also the ability to customize separate colors like the window background or accent color, and what we call the primary container. So it's basically a container that you put on the surface, like a container we use for navigation. And so you can customize those kinds of colors. And then there are some others that cascade from that and just automatically calculate it. And the rules for calculating them, that was quite a jigsaw puzzle. Definitely, I got inspired by Material, because Material 3 has that theming system that's very cool. And they use the tonal palettes for calculating colors for Material 3. What we've done, though, is we used an OKLCH for deriving those colors, which means that we basically just take the input in RGB, transfer it into a KLCH, and then output again back in RGB color system.
Didn't it fix something like purples?
Right. So KLCH has a wider range of colors, essentially, but it also fixes something that's been, I think, inherent in LCH, where at some point, if you go in the blue spectrum, it just on its own would switch to purple color. And it doesn't happen with the KLCH, because now the purples stay separate from the blues. There are all sorts of other things. I think Jeremy actually can speak to those, because I remember us discussing that in detail.
Yeah, color spaces are pretty complicated, and we were trying to match material designs as closely as possible, because blending of colors, which is very important for calculating colors. We have a base color, we have an accent color, and then we calculate a bunch of other colors based on those. If you are blending colors together in a way that produces results that a user doesn't like, then your system has failed. And the user's perception of color is very different from the RGB space. If you think about it, the human eye has a much wider range of green, but to a computer, green is just 256 different colors, blue is 256 colors, red is 256 colors. These have the same weight to a computer, but not to the human eye. So doing all of our color mixing in the OK-LCH space gets it to mix closer to what human perception of color really is, rather than mixing in another space that is more tuned for computer usage or printer usage.
So yeah, figuring out what system to use was a big part of figuring out how to allow people to theme the colors of the interface. And then after that, we just needed to determine different rules for different colors. And I won't go into details because it's a pretty complicated system to explain, but it's been definitely an exciting process to try to nail that.
So what themes have you guys been using lately?
I'd love to ask you that too, Alex. 'Cause I've seen yours. And every screenshot you send kind of burns my eyes.
Well, if you prepare, I could show it to the camera. I've been using...
All right. But you might want to avert your eyes for a moment. So they
avert your eyes if you're only
So they can
attuned
adjust to
to
this.
dark mode with the blinds down.
Okay,
Yeah,
one thing before he shows us
I've been
this,
using
one thing. So we very strongly believe that if your tools aren't powerful enough to allow you to create something ugly, they also can't create something beautiful. And so with cosmic theming, you can go anywhere that you'd like to go. And Alex, I think you went to cyberpunk, right?
Yeah, I made more of a cyberpunk theme. He calls it ugly. I call it beautiful.
Sorry.
Oh, the yellow's not picking up as well.
Yeah,
You guys
that's
gotta
okay.
see this
We
yellow.
We could get a screenshot out there.
And here I thought one of the multiple experiments that I had that I called banana yellow was too yellow for people. Apparently not.
I have been also horrified by what I've seen.
It's got to be the most yellow
I've
as
created
possible.
a number of different themes, and I just can't imagine living in a world where you have that high saturation, but I've seen all kinds of things. I've been using Ashley's automatic color generator quite a bit, and that it tends to pick up a lot of yellows and oranges because that ends up being more common than I thought it was in landscape photos, and it's a nice feel to it, almost like a earthy feel. It'd be good for fall, kind of weird in spring. But
Jeremy's alluding to something that will probably be Cosmic Epoch 2, our second release. Well, we call the releases Epoch, so we're on Epoch 1. Epoch 2 will be next year. But this is a system that automatically adapts your theme and accent color and everything to the wallpaper. It works quite well, but not quite production ready. It needs more refinement for next release. Maria, are you on Scarlet Witch? I was on that one for a while.
No.
Maria makes beautiful themes, of course.
Is it? Yeah, I made Scarlet Witch actually a while ago. Now I've been mostly oscillating between forest green and the very pastel sunset one. Like it's early sunset.
Yeah. I just changed mine to a steel, like this dark steel blue with the bright blue accents, and it's quite nice.
I should probably make
Well,
something that's actually like frost giants or something.
We'll have to get screenshots from you guys of this.
I've got a ton of screenshots.
Excellent.
Yeah. My favorite has been the Doom theme. And then I have a I don't know what to call it, Cos 9X or Cos 95 or something, but Windows 95 with the icons and the exact colors.
I love that one.
Cos Mac, which is just the Mac OS colors and icons. Unfortunately, those icons probably are not licensed in a way that I can even take a screenshot of them, but...
Screenshot's okay, right?
We won't tell.
They do really show the power of the theming because Jeremy's Cosmic 95 theme looks just like Windows 95, and it's It's quite striking.
Well, I'm going to throw a few more variables in.
Yeah.
There's a few more things we need to be able to do. But yeah, it's really close. We've got to have that good bitmap font, with the horrible aliasing that Windows 95 had.
Yeah. The theming community in open source, I think, is just an amazing, creative, cool part of our community, our open sourceness, and we really wanted to empower that community to make neat stuff.
Let's talk about the rest of the team. How did we end up choosing who we chose for building Cosmic?
Oh, it kind of started with what we needed to build, right, Jeremy?
Yeah, once we decided that it wasn't going to work for us to integrate, I had worked on a Mutter plugin, and it was way more difficult than I thought it should be. And the limitations led me to think that we should try something new. And so we found, for example, Victoria, who works on the Cosmic Compositor, because she was a maintainer of the Smithe project, which was a project to build a Rust compositor, basically a library for building Rust compositors called Smithe. And we wanted to have a Rust compositor, so that was a very easy thing to reason about. And the progress we've made on that has been insane. And that's easily the biggest project we've taken on, and the payoff has also been insane. The first time that I saw the tiling integrated into the Cosmic Compositor, and just how much more fluid and more logical it could be than what we had built on top of GNOME with a GNOME shell extension, everything just clicked into place. And that was the moment that I switched over to the Cosmic Compositor. And the other members of the team, we've got Michael working on the Toolkit. We've got Ashley working on applets and also the Toolkit. Michael's been working on the settings app. Ian's been working on the compositor and the settings app. And this team is a really low-level team working on brand new things for the Rust language. I don't know that we've hit on this yet, but a lot of the rationale for creating Cosmic was so that our team could work in the Rust language and have those benefits, have the ability to statically check a bunch of different security vulnerabilities, to have really lean and really fast and well-optimized code, and to have it all compiled to binary rather than running an interpreted language inside of the compositor. So our team was selected for that, and they're all very, very skilled Rust programmers and UI programmers at the same time, which is a very hard thing to find these days, as this is a very nascent field.
Yeah, we're essentially considerable participants in the Rust windowing ecosystem. A lot of the projects we're doing and a lot of the work that we're contributing and a part of because of Cosmic is also building at the same time how the future of building Rust applications will work. And one of the things so the compositor is one of the things that makes the compositor so important. It is essentially central. I consider almost the center of the desktop environment. All the whole feel of the desktop comes from the compositor. And it's kind of cool today because compositors were kind of a boring thing maybe 15 years ago, or they weren't as exciting to as many people. And today compositors, I think, are really hot and really exciting, and a lot of cool stuff happening in compositors because their impact on the user experience they are central to the user's experience. And that's the reason that it was going to be, one, a really big investment if we decided to go that route, but two, would have the biggest, like Jeremy said, payoff. But all of this also meant that we had to build, that there wasn't an existing toolkit. Well, there's Iced, which is a toolkit we decided to build on. But you want to talk a little bit about why we went Iced instead of, we looked at GTK, we looked at Flutter, we looked at Qt.
Yeah, well, the most promising one for Rust integration was GTK, for sure. We had already been developing in GTK. We already had a number of applications we developed in-house with GTK, had the keyboard configurator, the System76 driver, the firmware manager, and a bunch of other things. and our team was already skilled with GTK. And I think the major reason for us to consider other things was during the transition from GTK3 to GTK4. There was in GTK3, there was a library called libhandy that we were using in our applications to make them responsive. So libhandy would let you set up things that would collapse and open when the window size got smaller. And when switching over to GTK4, most of those items were moved to a new library called libadwaita. And libadwaita encodes a platform theme. And that platform theme is a GNOME-specific theme and what they want to ship. And at the same time, they were imposing a campaign of sorts against distributions theming their applications. And I don't want any part of that. So we tried writing programs in GTK4, but without having those libhandy widgets, it would involve a lot of work to make those programs responsive. Basically, things had been removed from GTK4 that were critical to making applications and were only available in libadwaita. And if we wanted to create applications with a different platform theme easily, then we would have to rewrite those in our own platform library. And so that got me thinking, if we have to make our own platform library, why not start from scratch and try to make it Rust all the way down? I've certainly run into lots of issues with GTK, especially with our Vala applications like the installer and the pop shop, where the security that Rust brings in is not there, and that causes a lot of difficulties in developing applications. And so we were searching for toolkits that were not GTK and were not Qt, but were instead written in Rust. And there was very little done in this area. And even still today, I would say it's a nascent area. There were some big contenders. Iced was still in a very early stage, but it was there. And there was Slent, even earlier was called 60 FPS, which was actually made by some people who had worked on Qt earlier. And so we evaluated the two, and it ended up being that Iced had a programming model that was very similar to the model we were using for some of our GTK programs. We had migrated to Realm 4, which was a Elm-style model of, I don't know exactly how to describe it, but there's a model, there is a view, and there's an update function that takes in messages. And that model, that programming model, was implemented in Realm 4 as a wraparound GTK4. Wasn't implemented completely the way that it's supposed to be, but Iced was very pragmatic and at the same time as being very dedicated to that model. They had been able to wrap GPU acceleration and have a bunch of important features while being abstracted by that model that we liked, the Elm programming model. And so we started working with Iced. A lot of things were missing, and some things are still missing today. There was no support for input methods. There was no support for drag and drop. Clipboard support was sporadic, and text support was completely broken. So essentially, Iced would require you to define a font that you wanted to use, and that would be used for all of the text in the application, so you could not localize the application at all. You couldn't have any text that wasn't the font that you had chosen. And so at some point I took on that project and I said, well, Rust needs to have a library for handling text. And I did a bunch of research on that and came up with something called Cosmic Text, which was then integrated into Iced and provides support for scanning the system fonts, finding the fonts that match a certain script, and then rendering using that script, and doing this in an extremely performant way. So now Iced can GPU render any localized font. That was one critical thing we had to resolve. Ashley resolved a bunch of clipboard and drag and drop issues. And Michael and Ashley and myself worked on libcosmic, which is kind of a platform library wrapper around ICE that provides a lot of other things ICE doesn't provide, like an abstraction for locating system icons and a bunch of different widgets, and also the theming system that Maria invented. So all of that came together into libcosmic as a wrapper around ICE. And during the time, we upstreamed tons of changes to ICE. There's not just the text library, Cosmic Text, that was integrated into ICE. I was also experimenting with software rendering. Then the maintainer of ICE redid that work in a way that fit in better. So ICE gained software rendering, whereas before it only had GPU rendering. Ashley wrote accessibility support for ICE that is going to be upstreamed soon, so that ICE applications can integrate with screen readers and other accessibility devices. And even now, after 2 years, there's still a lot of work to be done to close the loop. But ICE has become and libcosmic have become much, much more professional options for GUI development than what was available before.
I've been curious, what is it about the Elm architecture that our team likes?
It's hard to explain because it's not like you're forbidden from using this model with other toolkits. It's just that it's more difficult to set up. And essentially it enables for, I wouldn't say it's high performance exactly, and I wouldn't say it's boilerplate free either, but it feels to me like it is more performant to work in. I don't know how to describe it, but basically you have a model and you have a bunch of widgets that model generates, and then the widgets create messages, and the messages are sent back to the model. And the model contains all of the mutable state. And with a GTK application, it's a little different, that you may create buttons that are all reference counted. And the reference counting introduces some added complexities, like the inability to use any widgets in threads. You can't do that in GTK at all. But you can access the ICE model in a thread all you want. And in GTK, you have to attach callbacks to each widget. And those callbacks then have to retain some way of referring to the state, versus sending a message back to the model, which lets you update the state in one single place. It's kind of hard to explain, but it makes the code feel a lot cleaner. And at least for me, it feels like a lot less work to spin things up, but I can't really prove that's the case.
Well, that's one of our early goals, whether we ended up there on accident, I don't know, but one of our early goals was to make it easy to develop applets and applications for Cosmic. And I guess libcosmic and ICE, I guess the relationship, you can kind of think of it as libadwaita and GTK in a way.
I would say we don't have a libadwaita. We don't have a platform library that imposes a platform UI design. Because when you use libcosmic, it's more like using GTK3, and then ICE is more like GDK. And this, although ICE has its own widgets, it doesn't have some of the platform abstractions like being able to look up icons and theming. But libadwaita would be to take libcosmic and then force a system theme and force certain UI elements, and I don't think libcosmic does that. And you can see that by looking at all the different libcosmic applications. A widget in the panel, and they're all very different. Like we have a calendar widget, that's very different from other widgets. We of course have the system tray, which is literally defined by third-party applications however they want. And those are generated using libcosmic. The window titles are generated using libcosmic. So this was another very big advantage for us, is that the same code that's creating the apps is also creating the applets, is also creating the shell UI. So the Cosmic compositor is using libcosmic to generate window titles. I think that's incredible, because that means that we have one library that defines the system style everywhere, and the system style is user defined. So the user can modify the theme, and everything everywhere changes if it's the libcosmic application. So the default install You've got your Cosmic apps, applets, and the compositor. All of those things change. The launcher changes, the workspace's view changes, the window titles change, whether they're server decorations or client decorations does not matter. They will change, and everything is defined in one place. That was very important, I think, and not something that was possible with libadwaita.
Yeah, so it means if you want to have a custom corner radius for your windows and your widgets and all these things, you have one place to adjust that, and well, you might adjust it, you have one library to adjust it in, even though you might have a few different radiuses you want to change. But that means the entire platform is going to adopt what you've adapted or what you've changed.
Yeah, theoretically. Yeah, we have more things to move out to the configuration, things that are hard coded that need to be configured. But yes, and this is the libcosmic could be used. It's portable. It can be used on Windows, Mac OS, Redux. It could be used on a no standard platform. If you had an embedded device that was able to create a frame buffer, libcosmic is able to take in a custom renderer. That's what we're doing in the Cosmic Compositor, if I remember correctly. So you can have a custom renderer and create libcosmic GUIs that will show up in places where other windowing libraries would find it very difficult. A very important piece of this was layer shell. It was the way we were able to make the system as modular as it is. When you look at other Wayland compositors, and the way that they are integrating components, you look at KDE or GNOME or Hyperland, and from what I understand, the components are usually integrated into a single process space, where you have, in the GNOME case, I know this very well, where we have extensions that are JavaScript and they're loaded into the same processes, and not just the same process, the same thread as all of the other compositor UI. In Cosmic, we have every single piece of UI potentially able to come from a different place. The panel is created using layer shell. The panel then launches applets that then fill in different spaces in the panel. We have 3 different wings is what they're called. We have the left, the right, and the center, and they're filled in with different applets. And each applet is a different program. And those are filled in using layer shell, which is not supported by GTK. And
what is layer shell?
Layer shell is a protocol to talk to a Wayland server to place a specific window. There's other Wayland terminology, and someone would probably shoot me if I called it a window, but I call it a window. And to place a specific window on a specific layer in a specific place, because Wayland, the default protocol for windows, or surfaces, as one might call them, if they want to confuse normal people, the default protocol for Windows doesn't let you set a position and doesn't let you set a layer per se. So you can set a layer that is above applications or below applications. The background for Cosmic is not drawn by the compositor. It's drawn by a program that runs external to the compositor that loads the background and displays it in a layer shell surface that is underneath the regular application windows, which are called top levels in Wayland. If you want to know why I avoid Wayland terminology as much as possible, it's because it's confusing even to the people who work on it. So Wayland windows don't have that kind of ability, but using layer shell and integrating it into libcosmic, which was a huge set of code to produce a backend that was distinct and specific to Wayland and layer shell, lets us modularize the whole thing. The greeter is not part of the lock screen, is not part of the compositor either. So an issue with GNOME shell, potentially an extension, can kill different parts of, can kill the entire compositor and the whole session potentially, because it has access to the compositor and it's all running in the same context. With Cosmic, if an applet dies, if the lock screen dies, it doesn't matter. It gets restarted by the Cosmic session program, and it can reacquire its surface and then redraw itself.
These are the layers that enable us to build the platform that we were going for where people could build their own user experiences. So, Maria, do you want to kind of get into how you could use panels and applets and build a custom user experience from the platform we've made?
Yeah, sure. I think, well, first of all, your options are limitless. You can really go as crazy as you'd like to. But that said, we try to go for some nice defaults, which means when you just start the desktop environment with the defaults, you have the panel at the top and the dock at the bottom. And both are customizable, which means panel and dock both include what we call applets. And what looks like an icon that opens a menu, and pretty much every icon, or frequently it's every icon or a set of icons, is an applet. So what you can do is you can't toggle off the panel because we think that one panel at least should stay, because otherwise we don't want to lock someone into an experience of not having, let's say, a power button. But you can toggle off the dock if you don't use it. For example, you can auto-hide panels, and then you can definitely try to change how they look and what kind of functionality they include. So if you feel like your top panel doesn't have enough functionality, or maybe it has a lot of empty space, and you're the one who has to organize and put things into their own places, then you can go into settings application, get on the panel settings page, and find the configure panel applets button. Go there and basically drag and drop applet cards to change where the applets are located. We kind of structured the panel by segments so that you have the central segment and the two sides, so that it's easier to form different kinds of layouts with that panel. And so you can drag applets from one region to another one. For example, if you don't like your time and calendar right in the center, you can definitely move that, for example, to your right. I know Carl has it frequently next to the power button, which seems like nice enough location. Also, if you don't use applications, let's say, because people have different ways of launching applications, right? Some people use the dock for that. Some people use the app library, which is how you put the application button opens. Some people use launcher and just type the name of the application. So there are different kinds of ways. Let's say you're the one who uses the dock, which means you probably don't need that applications button there. Or maybe you're the one who is using a lot of shortcuts, which means you never open applications with the mouse and you always use Super A, which is a shortcut for it. So you can just remove that button and not have it in that left top corner, and you can put some other applet. We don't currently have the weather applet, but that's definitely something we've been dreaming of for a while. And I think that might be something that people might want to have. Or it could be, I don't know, I'm speculating now because some of the applets don't exist. We kind of went with obviously some basic set of applets. But moving forward, I imagine there would be some system monitor applets. I think there were conversations. And I think there was someone working on it already.
You could build something like, the community could build, or we could build something like a news applet, where if you click a news button and a window can open on your desktop, or another surface that drops down and has a bunch of news articles open, that are accessible. You could change workspaces. We have two different workspaces applets. One workspace applet opens an overview that is very similar to the Pop! OS and GNOME overview, with the exception that you can move your workspaces to be horizontal or vertical. But it opens that. We also have one called numbered workspaces, which on each monitor, because workspaces are per display or they can span displays, each monitor has a set of numbers, which indicates the workspace that you happen to be on, depending on which monitor you're on. So you could make a workspace applet that is perhaps a grid, if workspace grids are what makes more sense to them. You could make the app library for us opens up in a window in the center. We like the aesthetic and the functionality and the flexibility that the app library we built includes. But maybe it's not the right thing it's not the right thing for everyone. There will be different different opinions and approaches and ideas for it. So you could have a button that opens a menu directly underneath it that has a search field and most recent applications that have been opened and your running applications. You could build it to be, you could build applets to dramatically change what the user experience is, thanks to these underlying technologies like layer shell. And then with that, a distro that wants to experiment with user experience, or as Jeremy said, even devices can, any device with a screen will work with libcosmic and these components. So you could build a user experience for a device that's as small as a phone. I don't even, maybe a watch. I don't know, but all the way up to the biggest screens you could imagine, and have the flexibility to create whatever user experience is interesting to you or necessary or valid for that particular use case.
And I just want to add there are a number of third-party contributors already. Zephyr Cheese is the GitHub user who's working on the system monitor.
System monitor, clipboard. There's a Llama applet, I think. Yeah, there are quite a few out there. And one of the things we'll be working on for Alpha 2 is how we're going to display third-party applets in the store, Cosmic Store, so people can install them, and then they'd be added to the list that can be added to the panel or the dock. So we're pulling in all of that effort that the community is doing to make more unique experiences.
What would you say each of you is most excited for in both the first alpha and also Alpha 2?
I'm most excited about the feedback that we're going to get from users, good or bad or indifferent. This is something we've worked on for 3 years, nearly now, and longer if you include the really early work on GNOME extensions and the UX there. So the vision that we had 3 years ago, I think what's incredible is today it's actually realized that it doesn't vary actually that far away from what we really set out for. Maria, you don't think so?
No, I'm just the one who thinks that it's constantly evolving, which means it's probably, but it definitely closed, yeah.
I think that from the highest level, being able to create experiences with it, like we've achieved what our objective was. Now we get to put it in front of people on a larger scale. There's lots of Cosmic users already, which is pretty encouraging and exciting. But now we're going to release it. The alpha will have, frankly, it's almost scary because the amount of attention I think it's getting as a release is almost like a product, and it's just an alpha. Yeah. And so we want to set the right expectation, but I'm still really excited about the feedback.
I have to agree with Carl. The thing I'm most excited about is to see what happens when we do a first alpha release and how it's received. There's a lot of people using it, but there are far more people waiting to use it. And I would tell them they can use it now if I could reach all of them all at once, but they're waiting for something official. They're waiting for a download that they can get and they can install. And I don't know what's going to happen, because we have the people using it now are kind of loyal fans who are invested in it and are using it early because they like the idea and they want to see it succeed. But once you push it out as a release and make it official and have a easy way to install it, then you'll get people who are not like that and come from all over, and people who are ready to criticize it. And that honestly is what excites me the most, because I feel like you can't really finish a product until you have those people coming in and saying what's wrong with it, until you have the people who are coming from other desktop environments where they're not coming to Cosmic because they want Cosmic to succeed. They just want to find something that meets their own needs. And so having the feedback we have now, where it's mostly from contributors or people who are already invested in it, it's not really useful. It's not really useful. They'll tell us things that are obvious or things that are just optimistic, and they won't come in and say, hey, I'm running back to KDE because this thing was broken. And that kind of feedback, honestly, is what is required to finish a product.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as far as to say it's not useful, because we definitely use a lot of this feedback and we value it, and we constantly refine what we currently have. But I'm definitely excited to open the desktop environment to more variety of feedback. And I think that's what Carl and Jeremy were getting at. Because as Jeremy just pointed out, we have that a particular, maybe, I don't want to say type, but a particular kind of user who's really dedicated and who is interested and very engaged right now. And we do want to reach people who are just going to be using it on a daily basis, potentially moving forward. I'm not saying they're going to start doing that with alpha release, maybe, but we definitely do want to reach those users and to get their feedback, because that's what majority of our current Pop! OS users are, I think. And we definitely want to make sure that this new desktop environment is not just something that delights them, but it's also kind of gets out of the way and people can just install it and get going. And if they maybe get addicted to tiling, we don't mind. That's just fine.
That would be great. It's one thing to put something out there in a very hard to access way, like people to get Cosmic today. If the easiest way is to install Pop! OS, edit a system config file, install a bunch of packages, reboot, click on a gear that hardly anybody know even exists, select the Cosmic session, log in. It's a lot of steps. So we have selected a bubble. The people who are ready to go through all of those steps just to see what we've been working on. And I'm really excited for that bubble to be popped. I think the thing that fills me with excitement more than anything else is when bubbles pop. I remember when we were working on open firmware, and it was just going into it because there's hardly any good information out there about firmware. So going into it, I have no idea if this is even going to cover everybody's needs or not. And you just don't know until it reaches people who aren't going to reach out to you. They aren't going to come to you to test something before it's ready. They're going to wait for you to say that it's ready, and then they'll dump all the stuff on you to tell you what's wrong with it. And that's what I'm excited for. I want to see, it isn't successful if you can reach a small audience without hearing back about a lot of problems. It's successful when you can reach a very large audience and hear back about all the problems. I'll know that we finished it when we have 50 million installs and the issues coming in per day are like 1 or 2 issues a day. That's when I'll know it's done.
I think the other side of that is that we've been on Cosmic for probably 18 months. And it's our daily driver for that long, and to very differing degrees for 3 of us. So it's actually sometimes hard when I go back to Pop! OS and I'm using it. It's a little bit hard for me to relate to what it's like going from 2204 to Cosmic, because I've been on Cosmic for so long. Now we get to see that feedback and what that's like, and learn where the pain points are and start prioritizing around those as they come in.
You can hear it in the coverage too of like YouTubers. They're like, look at this, look at that. It's so cool what they're working on, but it's not ready yet. So then they're saying it's not ready yet. And I'm thinking, well, it kind of is. What are you saying it's not ready yet? So I'm worried we're going to stamp it. It's ready. And then all of a sudden it will flip from, okay, are they really going to put this out there, to, oh my God, they really did put this out there. And then they'll finally go through their review of 100 different things that are wrong with Cosmic.
Yeah.
And we can't really close the loop until we get that feedback.
No, we're definitely going to get a lot of feedback. And there are a lot of things that we know even is something now to do is to keep working on. So I definitely anticipate that we're going to have a flood of different things. And it's not like we haven't tested certain patterns and certain UX aspects. But I feel like we don't have necessarily maybe the testing on the same scale, because we've been looking for usability issues essentially all the way through. But there are certain larger C things, or the kinds of things they end up using more than, let's say, others, or things they are going to start missing more than others. Those are the kinds of things I'm looking for. And we probably actually are going to do more proactive testing too. We're not just going to sit and wait until people dump everything on us. That's just going to happen. But we are definitely planning on seeking more people once we have alpha, just because we know there's going to be somewhat fewer bugs to impact the kinds of feedback that we are getting.
Yeah, I think you mentioned this, but we have things that we just know. And so the alpha, the intent is to get Cosmic to the point where the things that we just know are very few, so that those aren't the things that we keep getting reported and we just get to triage bugs of stuff we know. The things that I'm concerned about are like VPNs and people connecting to VPNs. I've heard that's an issue. It's not something that we don't do that. So that's going to be something I expect. There's actually others. We just know that like alt tilde for the switching between the same application. It isn't something we have yet. So there's plenty of things that we still know that we can, are going to expect. But I think what we're saying is the things we're really excited about is what we don't know. That's what's cool.
So I don't know how we're doing on time, but I guess to get those burning questions answered, so what should people expect from the alpha and when should they expect to see it?
So we're expect to have a release by the end of July. Every indication to me is that we're on track for that. I don't see any big blockers to get there. So to set expectations, what we're going to do is very clearly outline what Cosmic can do today and what's left for us to do. So that people say, well, there's no Bluetooth settings. Well, we're going to have a list that says, okay, here's the Bluetooth settings and here's a link to the design. It's not in the alpha yet because we built our applets in the panel to be very powerful, which means from the applet you can just connect to a Bluetooth device. You don't get full management. So forgetting a device isn't something that's there. That's going to be in the settings page. But the point is the alpha is at the level because of the applets where you can set power modes, connect to Wi-Fi, change brightness, change your input and output devices for audio. Because those are so robust, we don't have to have a lot of settings in the settings application for it to be usable as a daily driver. And then it's all the details. A lot of settings panels is really what's left. And then the other thing is the bigger part, as big as that, is accessibility and leveling that up through the toolkit, through settings, through the compositor to a level that it's, to us, Cosmic must pass government regulations for accessibility. Because we ship our products to government and schools and those customers, we should, not only because of just the business needs, but also the importance of accessibility in computing in general and working on that. So yeah, I think that's, to my mind, that's what's there and what's missing. You guys think there's more? Yeah, pretty much some application refinement, but it's kind of, we think we're in a good position to respond to feedback, and actually have the bandwidth to do that instead of core stuff. It's going to be, is having multiple workspaces per display confusing in some way to some users? And okay, if that's the case, what do we need to work on for improving that UX? Those are the kind of things, I hope to be working on from a design and new engineering, new product stuff for the second alpha.
Yeah, there are large things like accessibility that kind of breaks my heart that we are not yet there, but we are hoping to be there. It's just that the sheer amount of things that need to happen for it is what's slowing us down. But other than that, there are a lot of small things, but I don't know even if I'm just going to start going down that rabbit hole. It's a rabbit hole. And then there are always new things that we want to be working on too. So I feel like we're just in the beginning of that road. Still.
We have a second released idea board already. These are great ideas, but we've got to think about those for a second release.
Guys, we're going to play a game really quick.
There's trivia? I hope it's not
trivia. It's not trivia.
Okay.
Good, because I'm bad at trivia.
So I poorly attempted to draw some cosmic icons and applets. So we're going to play a game where you guys get to guess which icon or applet it is and what it does. So first person to answer gets a point. And there's 4. Okay? Ready?
Okay.
Number 1.
Oh, I know.
Notifications.
And what does that do?
Well, I don't know. What is that?
Okay, it means you have notifications.
It means you have
This is
notifications.
an icon for notifications applet that opens the notification center. Actually, I think it's notification center applet. That's the official name. But basically, it's sitting on the top panel. Well, It's top, but it could be placed wherever you want it. And this is where you see the notifications, discard them, turn on the do not disturb mode, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cosmic edit.
Oh.
Yeah, Jeremy got it. Cosmic Edit.
Oh, okay. And what is that?
It's the text editor. Somebody wrote it. I don't know who.
Okay. This one is.
Keyboard brightness.
Yes. And then the last one.
Do not disturb, maybe?
Or battery.
Don't wiggle around.
No squiggles. Yeah.
No squiggles.
I think it's Bluetooth.
You are right. It's no Bluetooth.
So what is that, like a four-way tie?
We all won.
Yeah, everybody wins.
It's technically squiggles and wiggles in space time.
Good job, guys. Proud of you. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, guys. We really had a lot of fun hearing about Cosmic, and I think our audience will too.
Awesome. Thanks for having us. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
3, 2, 1, 0.
This has been the System76 transmission log. For more inspiration, check out the website and follow us on social media. On your descent back to Earth, please keep your hands and feet inside the transport beam at all times. Captain sign off.